Hello, I'm Karen Hollenbach, and this is the LinkedIn Marketer Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ian Hamilton, who's going to share his approach to LinkedIn from clarity of purpose to showing up consistently. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Karen.
And thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest. I have a wonderful professional community, and I've been encouraging my professional community to chat about their LinkedIn journey. And so Ian has graciously agreed to. So why am I doing this interview series? Well, at Think Bespoke, I help professionals and organizations make sense of LinkedIn with a framework I call the Elevate Map. It's simple, really, which is refreshing, isn't it? Discover what matters, refine your presence, connect with your network, and amplify your influence. Now, if you've worked with me before or you've listened to this podcast, you will know that I believe small, consistent actions that add up to meaningful, long-term impact. I'm an advocate of chipping away at it. So for those of you listening, I want you to hear from thought leaders within my professional community, and I do consider Ian to fall into that category. And I have actually had the privilege of hosting a panel with Ian as one of my thought leaders. When was that? That was about 12 months ago.
I think it was 12 months ago. Yes, thank you for your gracious invitation, not only to the podcast, but onto that panel. Yes.
And really, I see the way you show up on LinkedIn is it's confident, and it's confident from the perspective of when I have a conversation with you, you sound, you post on LinkedIn in a way that is very similar to a conversation I have with you. And that's something I encourage people to do. There's something strange can happen to some people when they're on LinkedIn that they're sort of overcome by the should. So, but we'll dive into that. So it's really my hope for people listening to today's podcast episode that Ian's story will inspire you to take action on LinkedIn. And because we'll work through the Elevate Map as part of the questions I ask Ian, know that you might be in a different place to Ian. And so what showing up on LinkedIn looks like and taking action for you might just be a part of the way Ian's doing it. So by way of more formal introduction, Ian Hamilton is a culture fit recruitment leader who has led Carroll Consulting for nearly 3 decades. He's focused, I think you're officially an elder. Am I allowed to say that?
I used that term recently, but it took me a while to get there.
Yes, that's how I feel about expert. So interesting. So Ian's focus is helping organizations align values, culture, and people to drive long-term performance and minimize the risk of poor hires. Now, interestingly, and probably the reason why I love chatting to you and why I think listeners are going to love listening to you is that you're guided by Stoic. Am I saying that right?
Yes, certainly. I think that's been a more recent discovery of mine, how much they do align and help one continue on the improvement path. But yes,
yeah, and
Stoic.
I think it's Stoic philosophy. I feel like every second non-fiction book I read that especially around leadership and culture, that it's mentioned. So really what's unique about Ian, and we can debate whether he thinks is unique or not, but I certainly think he is that he combines this strategic insight with that practical experience. And that is what has led to him developing Carroll Consulting's unique culture fit methodology and leading a specialist team of trusted advisors. Now, Ian won't tell you this, but I'm going to. His contributions are recognised globally, including platinum recruiter status in NPAworldwide, which is a wonderful community of global recruiters who I'm very happy to know you through that, Ian. And he's been awarded in the top 3% of recruiters worldwide. Wow.
Thank you. That's probably more just a phase of continually turning up. You were talking about continually turning up on LinkedIn. Well, I probably really just got that accolade because I've been continually turning up through the NPA network, and a little bit like the flywheel, it just builds a bit at a time, and before you know it, people are talking about accolades and you being an elder where you're not really doing anything different.
Well, I do think you have a generosity of spirit. And a little birdie told me at a recent NPA Worldwide conference that I hung out with one of your team. You weren't there, but your beautiful new team member was. And I was told a story of you very generously offering to mentor someone who was on that thought leadership panel with us in the last 12 months. So
Okay.
I feel like that award is very deserved. All right, so let's dive in. So in this sort of first step of the Elevate map, it's really about discovering what matters. So for you, when you think about your LinkedIn presence, what's the core message or impact you want to be known for? And how did you arrive at that clarity?
Good question. Let me give you a bit of background though. Obviously in recruitment, and you don't necessarily, your audience isn't necessarily recruiters or recruitment people, is it? It's a broader
No, not
audience.
necessarily.
No.
Although I think at some point everyone becomes as I often say to people, they're professional services. They're also people who are trying to move from, it's sort of like LinkedIn's on their to-do list and they know they need to do more, but it feels quite performative. And they're probably subject matter experts. And they just need a bit of encouragement from people like yourself to see a way to do it that doesn't feel like you're doing the not so humble brag, or yeah. So that sort of gives you a sense of, it's more mindset, the sort of people I think that listen to this. And also I do have a following of LinkedIn marketers who manage the LinkedIn company page, but their experience is that they're dealing with executive teams who are really reluctant to show up on LinkedIn. They don't necessarily understand why. So that sort of context of who's listening.
Well, I think these days it's certainly a beast. And people say to me, oh, you must think it's fabulous. And it is very much a love-hate relationship, mainly because as a recruiter, everyone wants to connect with you. And it's one of those things that you can certainly get onto to look for something, go down 3 rabbit holes and forgot the reason why you got onto LinkedIn in the first place. It's a very crowded market, and that can be a bit overwhelming. But you mentioned, I think you talked about becoming you talked about uniqueness somewhere along the journey, and what I realised is that, actually just before LinkedIn, you begin to realise that the experience you've had in your vocation, I started talking to people that I was in front of about that, thinking nothing of it, and they were suddenly listening to my experience, and I didn't think anything special of it. And you suddenly realise all the years of experience you've built up is interesting and insightful to people. I guess it's a little bit like that with LinkedIn, except how do you stand out in such a crowded community? And I felt that you talk about uniqueness, but the only thing that I've got that's unique is me. So I decided to just start putting me out there as I would when I was just having a chat with a client, or if something caught my attention, I'd talk to them about it. Well, I'll post about it. I've tried to make it a little bit more meaningful or related in some way to the recruiter's journey, but not so much the recruiter as such, more someone that has a passionate about understanding culture, looking for habits that are required for success in a role, and looking for repeating patterns of those habits in candidates. And that can cover a whole range of things, about talking about reference checks or talking about how to do an interview. But I began to realise it's my perspective on those that creates that uniqueness. Sorry, long answer.
No, that's why I want you on. I want to chat to you, because I think it helps people, I like long answers, it helps people understand your thinking. And that's really the point of having the Elevate map, which is a simple framework, I suggest, that, well, why I'm actually here. And so I think you've done a really good job of explaining that context. And I think it's something that actually people sort of get in their own way. Like once you've had that insight that actually your perspective could be quite helpful, it's like it gives you permission. Like, did you feel like, okay, well, I'm going to share this more? Like, this is who I'm talking to. Like, I'm imagining that I'm talking to people in a normal conversation, without being on LinkedIn, just in a meeting room or over coffee. Is that when you sort of thought, okay, that's who I'm going to be talking to when I'm on LinkedIn?
Well, and part of the problem was initially you're thinking, oh, you see some of your industry peers out there and you think, oh, well, what have I got to say? They've said that, or they've commented on that, or gee, they've posted that and got 16 comments, and you just think, well, it doesn't matter. That's me. This is my view on it. I'm just going to put it out there and keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
And I guess the funny thing about LinkedIn, when you're in a meeting, you can immediately judge the response. You get that automatic feedback. And through several months or years, you think, oh, why do I bother with all this stuff? And then suddenly people say, oh yeah, I saw your post. Oh, that was interesting what you said the other day. And they never said anything. They never commented. And then suddenly you realize there's a little bit of a hidden audience out there that does sort of take notice.
There's a lot of a hidden audience out there. And the 2025 LinkedIn Edelman Thought Leadership Study proved that. And there was also some stats that came through from Richard van der Blom, a global LinkedIn expert that's known for the LinkedIn algorithm reports. And he posted something in the last few weeks, which Debbie, who works with me, and I have been saying forever. And so I love it when sort of the qualitative advice that I might give to clients is demonstrated in his comprehensive analysis, which is the people who are engaging with your content. So when I say engage, like, comment, repost, are not necessarily the potential clients or existing clients you want to nurture. They're people who love you and support you, and they're really, really important in terms of your content. But the people who are considering you as a service provider and looking at your content are observing. And this is what's sort of the strange dynamic of LinkedIn. There are these hidden buyers who are observing, and reputation's built over time. So if you're not, for anyone listening, I want that sort of that idea that Ian's just shared around, why am I bothering? But then he's realized over time that people have been observing. It will pay off in the longer term. And really LinkedIn is that longer game, as is one's professional reputation, right? It's the longer game.
What I also began to realize as well is that there's a portfolio of content. It's a bit like doing blogs or your website. There's a portfolio of collateral there that people will look at. So they get a sense of what you're about, what your focus is, how you handle yourself. Yeah, so that.
And so when you think about your LinkedIn profile specifically, so not necessarily what you're posting, but you've really thought about, okay, I'm talking to really owner-centric or owner-led business leaders who are having to make these hiring decisions and providing some insight for them. How have you shaped or refined your LinkedIn profile so it reflects your expertise and values in a way that resonates with the right people? Like actually the way you've written your profile. Oh, you haven't? Okay. Fair enough.
Sorry, yes, the writing the profile, we always focus on the culture fit and the understanding and the insight piece around the dynamic of the repeating patterns of behaviour. But what I just tried to be an extension of myself, the way I would get a response when I'm sitting in front of a client. So if they find it interesting, well, maybe the LinkedIn audience finds it interesting as well. And instead of trying to second guess whether they may find it interesting or I worry about what I post, if if it piques my interest, I'll do it.
Mm.
So,
And I think,
well,
yeah, sorry, I
sorry,
cut you off. You're going to say something else.
the other thing I was going to remember too, the more you post, the less impact you're going to have if it's a piss poor post that you've done. Sorry about that terminology.
But fine. Technical term. I think people understand completely what you're saying.
If
Yes,
you post one in
Mm.
if you post 6 in 6 months and people have a look at your collateral and there's one odd one there that it might be 20% of your content, but if you're posting several, well, at least a couple of times a week, and then you do one that doesn't resonate or doesn't quite hit, well, it's not part of the main message kind of thing. They'll overlook that. Well, I think
absolutely.
Anyway.
And because people can see, your posts are part of your profile, so they can see that if your public settings are there. Now, I'm going to sort of defend Ian, because I remember working with his team. This is ages ago when you still had Rania working with your team. And I remember you all went through this very comprehensive process around your about section. And it's it's always struck me that you and your team have taken the time to think about the way you write about yourself on LinkedIn. Now, that was a while ago, but it was very much, I see lots of profiles in that people haven't even bothered to write the about section. So if you had to choose sort of 2 sections of your LinkedIn profile that you look at that are the most important to you. So if you're looking at someone's LinkedIn profile for the first time, what stands out to you as being important on a LinkedIn profile?
Well, I'm probably not a good judge, because 99% of the time I'm having a look at the roles they've had and the longevity in each of those roles and what they've done and how they've described it, and perhaps even if it matches with the resume that I've got from a few years ago.
Well, that's helpful for
Probably not a
people
good
listening.
judge of that.
Yeah, that's probably, if anyone's listening to this, it just happens to be an active job search, it's make sure that your assets match each other. So if you're actively applying for things, make sure that it's matching. Or that if you want to be picked up in a search by someone like Ian, that it's all telling the right story and filled in. All right, so let's talk. We've got this idea of what your profile looks like. You've given us a sense of sort of why you're there, what you're talking about. What about networking? So networking on LinkedIn can feel random for many people. What intentional steps do you take to build meaningful relationships rather than just say add connections?
Well, I guess having been in the market quite a while, sometimes it's someone that you've known or might have interviewed or some years ago, and you've bumped into them on LinkedIn, or they've followed you or done something, and then I'll reconnect and maybe send out to them. So sometimes if I think it's a profile that he's got someone, he or she might have a business that I think fits the dynamics of what a lot of our clients do, I might reach out, but I do that far less than, I don't necessarily use it as a prospecting tool as such. Through your discipline, I'm looking more at the people that have looked at my profile or looked at the posts, and again, through that, I've picked up people that I might have had some contact with or lost contact some time ago, and I'll reach out. So I don't prospect as such on it. Maybe I should. But what I also look for is people that might be doing reasonably unique things out there, or positioning themselves in such a way as whether they're doing culture fit also, or they're doing something creative and different in coaching or creative leadership skills, something like that. I look for that stuff to reach out with them and just understand. So, maybe not as much as we should be. So,
well, I think everyone has that feeling about LinkedIn. You can always do more, but there's only so many hours in the day. There's 2 things I want to say about what you've just shared with me. So the first one is, you're in my sort of top 3 interesting LinkedIn messaging resources. So you'll often find something interesting and bounce it to me on LinkedIn messaging and say, oh, look at this. And I'll find something that I think, oh, Ian should weigh in on this, and flick it to him. So I just want to remind people that you've got this news feed, right, on LinkedIn, your home feed, and it's a sort of public forum. I like to think of it as the sort of the corridor or the water cooler in your office. But then you've got LinkedIn messaging. So don't forget, if you see an article that you think is really interesting for someone who you maybe want to reconnect with, and I don't mean for a hot date, I mean for business. You know, there are other platforms to use that. I mean, you want to reconnect with them because you think there might be an opportunity for them, or you want to talk to them about whatever in relation to your role. Sending a LinkedIn message is a really nice way to be relational on LinkedIn versus transactional, and sending them in that message something that is an article or a resource that they think might be useful. Now, I don't mean, oh, I've got this program coming up and you might like to register. We all get those sorts of messages. It's, here's a really interesting article that I think you'll enjoy. I imagine doing that in your LinkedIn rituals. And the second thing I wanted to mention is Ian spoke about the discipline that I encourage, and I call that my thoughtful 15. So what I encourage people to do is try to dedicate at least 15 minutes a week on LinkedIn, where you're engaging intentionally with your LinkedIn newsfeed. Hopefully you've rung the bell of the people and the company pages that you want to follow, so you're sidestepping the algorithm, and you're actually looking at what those people are posting, and you're either commenting or you're reposting it with your perspective, or it's encouraging you to think about something you might like to post. So that's that discipline, because really it's the rituals that you have on LinkedIn that can help you with networking as well. And I think listeners are probably relieved that you're not sort of a heavy duty prospector on LinkedIn, Ian.
I couldn't think of anything worse, because I think anyone that has a profile on LinkedIn is tired of the reach out. Oh, I'd love to put you into my network, or even the more blatant ones. I want to be added to your network, and then 5 microseconds later, you get the big blurb and the spiel that punches through, and you just anyway.
Yeah, it's transactional,
that's
and so
frustrations of it. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And so it's that relational aspect. I enjoy the sort of the interchange with you on LinkedIn messaging, because there's always something interesting. And I think I flicked you something today because I've started reading Brene Brown's latest book, Strong Ground.
Yes, you did, I must admit. And I saw the one
good.
above that you'd sent me a little while ago, and I was reminded of the depth and the insight on that as well. So unfortunately, I need another 2 years between now and Christmas to get through my reading list for the rest of this year.
Well, I'm on Audible 1.7, and sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll sort of put the earpods in and AirPods in and have a bit of a listen, which is a bit of a confession, but it's a nice way to make my way through more books. I think I've nearly hit my goal for the year. All right, so let's talk about amplifying your influence. What's your approach to showing up and sharing your perspective on LinkedIn, and how do you stay consistent? So I haven't talked about this yet with listeners, but I actually use you as an example, Ian, when I have people in my network who are feeling really tentative about using video. And I say, well, have a look at what Ian Hamilton's doing, because I think it is one of the best examples I've seen of consistently showing up with insights in a way that give me a sense of how your brain works, what your perspective is, what you might be like to work with. So can you shed some light on cadence? So how often you turn up, what you're thinking about before you do it, and maybe some examples of things you've posted recently and why you thought that was worth posting?
Okay. There's a lot in that. Let
I
me
know.
unpack it.
So just tell us what you do on LinkedIn, and then talk about your video, because it's great.
All right. Well, maybe if I can reverse that, I'll talk about the video, because you've mentioned that, because I'm actually a bit conscious now that I haven't done a video for a few weeks, because I ran it for a while and thought, that's not working. I think there's a bit of cringe factor in that, and I'll drop it. And since I have, again, people have said, oh, I was watching your videos. Yeah. So it's that piece. And the problem was I was umming and ahhing whether to do it or how to do it, and then I just thought, I just got to do it. Instead of writing about it, I'll just pick up my phone and I'll do it on the train platform, so they can be platform posts. And I did several of them, and that's how I got the momentum going with it. But the discipline is interesting. I actually like to, so I've disciplined myself to at least try and have a post. I'm using the wrong terminology here, on Tuesday and Thursday. But what I try to do is think about little things that have occurred, or as I say, I used to think it was just mundane, uninteresting stuff till I started talking to clients about it, and they showed some interest and they liked the insight I could bring to them from my experience. And so that's what I try to put into the LinkedIn post. And sometimes it's a little bit of a theme that runs. You may or may not have seen recently, there was the piece about a leadership trait of holding an alternative view. It's a really good trait where you can hold opposing views, particularly in today's environment. And with Tom Stoppard, the playwright who has recently passed, he had this, and it was written about quite a bit, this ability to write into his scripts both truth and inventions. And I thought, oh, what a great play on the whole contrarian option. And so I did a little bit of a post on that. But quite some years ago, someone who I went to a seminar with talked about, you might think your day or your week is mundane, but just write down all those little things that occur, because quite often that can be an interesting insight to someone if you actually post on it.
Yeah.
So that's how the opposing piece came. Sometimes things are popular. You might see someone bagging references, so I might do something on references. So I've got a whole little, we used to call them tickler files, but I've got it inside an electronic post-it note with all these little ideas and bits and pieces. The ones that you're going to see coming up in the future are ones around first seek to understand, which was always Stephen Covey's piece, which is one of the main pieces of what we do when we go into a client, first seek to understand. I want to talk about the interview being the most powerful communication tool known to mankind. The interview is the backbone of finding out information. It's not just something that's used when we interview a candidate. We interview clients, we interview referees. And then when you find out something where there's an alternative being done. Recently, I caught up with a senior executive who's actually retired, and he was telling me about a reference check that he did for another senior executive that had reported to him. And it was an hour's work he had to do online in just filling out a form. Now that misses the whole nuance of the interview and being able to probe when someone doesn't speak as confidently about in a response. So those sorts of things prompt me to say, hey, there's a post there. And someone's recently just bought us today a little present for those little Christmas stand-up men where you stick them in together in wood and unstick their little faces and bits and pieces. And I've taken a photo on that and I've said, what a great Christmas present for a recruiter. He can put together the candidate however he wants it. So those are the little things that spark insight and intrigue, and I think I'll just post that.
I love all those
Sorry,
examples. Please don't apologize. That's exactly what I wanted to hear and why I enjoy your posts, because for listeners, there's a few things in that which hopefully you've picked up. One is Ian has a method of tracking his thoughts. Well, it's so obvious, but a lot of people have this, it's really about getting it out of your own way, posting regularly. The second thing I heard there was I set my plan in an ideal world. Weeks don't always go according to plan on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I love that you mentioned that picture of the Christmas gift, because one of the things I notice about you when you post, which is why I tend to always engage with your perspective, is you might have seen the Ferrari film, or you might have been in a really interesting city in Europe, or with the example you've just shared there, that you've got this picture that someone's given you. And so back to sort of what you originally said about this is, what's unique about me is me. And so you're sharing your unique experience, your unique perspective, and it's conversational, and it's you also think quite deeply. So I guess, Ian, like, it gives people a sense of what you're like, how you think, and what you bring to the table. And I think in the context of the current world of recruitment and working with people on what culture fit looks like, it's that ability to hear what is not said in a conversation, watch the body language in an interview, and look for those repeating patterns that AI will never be able to replace. And this is a consideration for many of the NPA Worldwide members. I mean, we spent a lot of time at a recent conference exploring what is it that's unique about what you do. And it's these sort of subtle things that you pick up when you're thinking about all of your client interactions that you've obviously learnt is useful when you share your perspective.
Never say never. I have an interesting story on that. I haven't posted this yet, but maybe I should.
Do tell. You hear everyone. You heard it here first.
Because Hannah brought back this matrix idea through Sherpa about putting these problems in and having these 6 alternative answers. So I went home and I was telling my wife, I was waxing lyrically about what Hannah had brought back and shown us, and my wife said, "Oh, you've got that look in your eye again. Just because it's new, it doesn't mean to say you should use it. And besides, when you come home and tell me it'll make dinner, put dinner on the table and pour me a glass of wine, then I'll get excited."
Oh, I love that perspective. And listeners, Hannah is a newer team member of Carroll Consulting, who I was very happy to meet when we were at the NPA conference in Sydney. Yeah, it was interesting. We were overwhelmed with AI solutions, and that was balanced out beautifully with some creative sessions too. So yes, we are living in very, very interesting times. All right, so we've got a sense of your discipline, what you post, how you post. Of course, all listeners are going to be diving in the show notes and making sure they're following you on LinkedIn. Let's zoom out about a little bit and think about all these steps together. So strategy, that old chestnut that I always love to talk about, and long-term impact. Looking back, what small but consistent actions on LinkedIn have made the biggest difference for you or Carroll Consulting in terms of your long-term goals? So a bit of insight around what you've been doing on LinkedIn over time.
Can I just sidestep that slightly?
Sure.
Because there's one thing I missed about my posting, which, being a bit of a perfectionist at heart, allows me to distance myself, and that is putting it on buffer to post. I really enjoy that because I don't get caught up with the idea of, oh, is this quite right? Can it be better? What have I done? Whereas I can just put it in buffer, then I can actually detach from it, and I know, well, that's going to come out in a day or two's time, and I try to preload quite a bit, and that gives me that ability to think, well, okay, that's it. It's not perfect, but it's another post, and I don't have to be sitting here and push the go live button. So that's helped me enormously in a bit of the whether you use some other pre-posting service or not.
I think it's a great example of your discipline. And do you have that feeling? I do that sometimes because I post within LinkedIn sometimes when I have that same, especially around my newsletter. I tend to sort of need to go deep into my flow when I'm writing my newsletter. So it tends to, I sort of get on a bit of a roll. Do you when it sort of posts amongst a very, very busy day, or you may not have been on LinkedIn in the last sort of 12 hours, do you sort of give yourself a little, not pat on the back, but you went, oh yes, thank you, previous version of myself that posted that and had that thought? Do you ever feel that way?
No, I don't, because the busy day takes over. Now, I'm pretty sure one posted today, and then you don't need to be attached in it if you don't get any comments. But then it's a pleasant surprise if someone comments and it pops up in your inbox saying,
Yeah.
so and so's joined the conversation. Think, oh,
Yeah.
someone's
What
noticed.
conversation? Oh, okay. Yes, that's something, a previous version of myself. All right. So may we go into that sort of
Yes,
zooming
please.
out and looking out? And I think that was a good catch, because that's what I mean about the discipline. And people listening, you probably already know this, but you can schedule within the LinkedIn experience, or you can use third-party scheduling tools like Buffer. And there is there's sort of the paid versions if you're using lots of it, and there's also free versions. So do check them out. And I think there's so many other options other than Buffer now, but that's actually a tool that Think Bespoke, we still use Buffer and have used it for years. And then we do also rely on the LinkedIn scheduling now too. But Buffer gives you that sort of bird's eye view of what's coming, and you can sort of move it around if you need to. So zooming out, looking back over what you've been doing on LinkedIn, even over the last 12 months since that thought leadership panel, you've played around with video, which anyone listening who feels very reluctant about video, you don't have to do video if you're listening. It's just something that hopefully what you're hearing with Ian's approach is he's got a curiosity, he's thinking about how he shows up, and he's playing around with different formats. So what have you learned? How has this helped you showing up on LinkedIn regularly?
I guess it goes back to anyone building a network or a reputation or a company brochure or a website. I just see it that someone can have a look at that particular medium and get a sense of me and what I'm about and what I'm passionate about. So it's building a portfolio of collateral. That's really the way I view it. I will pick up on something you said earlier too. I was a little bit flippant on the about piece, but probably my most important responsibility as a CEO is be the custodian of why culture fit and understanding the value and the benefits that it brings clients. That's why I get pedantic when I start writing all that stuff and saying, no, don't say we. Put it in the format of the client. What value are they going to see in it? I know I'm a bit of a pain with that stuff, but I see it as being vitally important in relation to allowing them to see the benefit or the value that other clients have seen in us. So yes, I do focus quite intently as a custodian on what we're about, what we do, why users.
Yeah, and I think your people who are following you are probably thankful, because you're always very, very clear about that. Oh, so we've got custodian, we've got elder. I think people might have actually learned something about how to show up on LinkedIn today. So thank you, Ian. Before I sign off and play some music and wrangle the tech for the end of this episode of the LinkedIn Marketer, is there anything else you would like to share with people listening today?
Yes, do it. It can be overwhelming and frightening and scary, but just do it, because that first one you've done becomes one of two, becomes one of three, becomes one of 333, and it doesn't matter. So you just keep doing it and just be yourself, because that's the only truly unique thing you've got.
Thank you, Ian. Lovely words to finish on. Thanks for listening to the LinkedIn Marketer podcast. I hope today's conversation has given you a new perspective on LinkedIn. And I'd like you to remember, what's important about your LinkedIn presence will depend on where you are on your own professional journey. So today's insights from Ian will hopefully help you think about discovering what matters, refining your presence, maybe beyond just the about section, connecting with your network, and the importance of being relational and amplifying your influence. Just do it. That feels like a good catch cry for a sporting brand. Small steps taken consistently really do make a big impact. If you'd like to learn more about the Elevate Map, head over to Think Bespoke's website. I'm Karen Hollenbach. See you next time.